Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, classmates. Our topic for today is about genetically modified organisms, science, health, and politics. Presented by Angel May O'Kelly and Maria Kistel Hamor. What is genetically modified organism? A genetically modified organism or GMO is an animal, plant, or microbe whose DNA has been altered using genetic engineering techniques. Ang GMO o genetically modified organism ay isang halaman, hayop, microorganismo o iba pang organismo na ang genetic makeup na binago sa isang laboratorio gamit ang genetic engineering o transgenic technology. Lumilikha ito ng mga kombinasyon ng mga gene ng halaman, hayop, bakteryal at virus na hindi nagaganap sa kalikasan o sa pamamagitan ng traditional crossbreeding methods. Who is Rosalie Eliasus? A former overseas Filipino worker in Singapore, corn farmer attended the integrated pest management farmers field school and was introduced to BT corn, a genetically modified corn that is resistant to the destructive Asian corn borer. So, noong 2001, si Rosalie Eliasus, isa siyang Filipino worker sa Singapore na naging farmer at siya yung nag-integrate ng pest management farmers field school at siya din ang nagpakilala ng BT corn. Jack Williamson or John Stewart Williamson, April 29, 1908, November 10, 2006, who wrote as Jack Williamson, was an American science fiction writer, often called the Dean of Science Fiction. He also credited with one of the first uses of the term genetic engineering. Early in his career, he sometimes used the pseudonyms or Will Stewart and Nils O. Sunderland. Si Jack Williamson, siya yung author ng science fiction novel na Dragon Island na siya rin ang nagpakilala ng genetic engineering. Ang process dito ay minamapulate yung genes ng organism. So dito, ang minamapulate natin is yung genes at trina-transfer natin yun from one organism to another organism. So, antibiotic-resistant E. coli or bacteria was created in 1973 using genetically modified male mosquitoes as pest control over female mosquito carriers of Zika virus. So, ang antibiotic-resistant E na-discover noong 1973 and noong genetically modified male mosquito as pest control, imbis na tayo ay mag-spray ng panglamok o Vigon or kung ano pang ginagamit nating pang-spray para mamatay ang mga lamok, ginagamitan na lang natin ng genetic modified male mosquito. So, dito naman tayo sa mga bacteria. How bacterial gene is introduced through genetic engineering to plant cells and tissues to develop and breed a genetically modified plant. So, galing sa mga bacteria, kukuha tayo ng specific gene kaya i-isolate natin or i-clone natin para mas dumami siya. Then, afterwards, magkakaroon tayo ng transformation at magkakaroon doon sa cell. Kukuha tayo ng cell from the plant cell and i-culture natin at ilalagay natin uli at itatanim. At magkakaroon ng plant breeding hanggang sa dumami sila. GMOs in food and agricultural industries. The Center for Ecogenetic and Environmental Health, or CEE 2013, identified the following roles of GMOs in the food and agricultural industries. So, we have number one. Number one is pest resistance. Genetically modified plants to resist certain pests. An example is BT corn. The DNA genome of the BT corn has been modified with the gene of Bacillus thuringiensis, a soil bacterium that produces proteins which is a toxic to corn borers or worms. So, the first one is pest resistance. GM crops have been genetically modified so they are toxic to certain insects. They are often called BT crops because the introduced genes we originally identified in a bacterial species called Bacillus thuringiensis, a soil bacterium that produces proteins which is toxic to corn borers or worms. Pag hinambaw naton nga Bacillus thuringiensis haradus species nga ga-star sa soil or yapok, daya the bacteria nga ga-produce it protein kung siin ro mga lasod sa mga sapat nga gadapo sa mga crops or nagabuwong it pagkaon sa crops and so on. Number 2, virus resistance. Genetically modified plants to resist certain viruses. So, example is GM papaya or rainbow papaya. The papaya ringspot virus or PRSV is known to be detrimental to papaya plants. The protein of PRSV was introduced to the papaya plant through plant tissue, which turned out to be resistant to the virus itself. The effect was like the vaccines humans have against measles or influenza virus. Makes plants less susceptible to disease caused by such viruses, resulting in higher crop yields. Plant viruses can be serious pathogens in crops as they can cause anywhere from minor losses to total crop failure. Viruses can be transmitted to crops in a number of ways, ranging from contaminated toes to seed and pollen infection. Kaya siya tinatawag na papaya ring spot virus or PRSV kasi sa papaya lang siya meron. So ang epekto ng mga plants kagaya ng mga papaya, halimbawa na lang yung sa vaccines like people po. Pag nababaksinan sila, so it possible na magkaroon sila ng measles. Sa papaya naman, para po siyang nagkakaroon ng parang peka. So, di ba minsan nakakakita tayo ng papaya na mixed yellow or orange at green. Yun yung mga example na may virus na PRSV. Kung tawagin, ang kadalasan sa papaya dapat na hinog is yung kulay orange. Tapos yung hilaw is green, pure green at orange lang po. So, yung papaya na may PRSV is may kulay na orange or green, may peka. Herbicide tolerance. Genetically modified plants to tolerate herbicide. An example is Roundup Ready soybean. Glyphosate, an herbicide for weeds, was introduced to soybeans, making it tolerant to be herbicide itself. Farmers then can spray the herbicide, killing the weeds, but not the soybeans. Is a plant ability to withstand a particular chemical herbicide. This allows the farmer to kill weeds while not harming the crops. Pag sinabing weeds, ito po yung ligaw na damo na tumutubo. Ang weed isa sa problema ng mga farmers kasi not only complete the water, sunrise, or space but also in the harbor insect. Some disease, hindi ito maganda tingnan sa mga tanim kapag may ligaw na damong tumutubo sa crops. 4. Fortification. Genetically modified plants fortified with certain minerals. An example is golden rice. Beta-carotene, a precursor of vitamin A, was introduced through biosynthesis genes to the rice, making the rice grains fortified with vitamin A. Beta-carotene, a precursor of vitamin A, was introduced through biosynthesis genes to the rice, making the rice grain fortified with vitamin A. So, pag sinabing beta-carotene, ito po yung mga isa sa mga pangangailangan ng human kasi ito po yung mayaman sa vitamin A. So, posible po na makuha ng mga tao para po magkaroon tayo ng good vision. So, that's the beta-carotene. So, food fortification is another way to ensure the population consume adequate levels of micronutrients, kagaya na lamang po sa cereals. Kadalasan po, pag may binibili po tayo mga cereals, kahit pa doon sa mga cereals or energy, so kadalasan na may makikita tayo na nakalagay na fortified with multiple vitamins and minerals. So that means na yung cereals na yun is this of micronutrients po na dadagdag na sa during the production po ito. It means po habang ginagawa po, pina-process na yung cereal, may possible po siyang madagdagan po siya ng mga micronutrients na makakatulong sa people kapag po nakain and so on. Number 5, cosmetic preservation. Genetically modified plants resist natural discoloration. An example is Arctic apple. The apple variety was genetically modified to suppress the browning of apple due to superficial damage. Genetically modified plants resist natural discoloration. The apple variety was genetically modified to suppress the browning of apple due to superficial damage. So it means po yung apples or genetic modified apples po is kapag cut, hindi po siya mag-turn into brown. Kasi po 'di ba, kadalasan nagka-cut tayo ng apples, kadalasan po nakikita natin pag once naging kiwa haiga brown sa ana nga sud, tawag doon hindi siya GMO. Number 6, increased growth rate. A genetically modified organism that has higher yield in growth than normal species. An example is aqua advantage salmon. A gene from an ocean put an eel-like fish was introduced to Pacific China oak salmon, making the salmon grow faster than its normal rate. A gene from ocean food, an eelfish was introduced to Pacific China oak salmon, making the salmon grow faster than its normal rate. Ang mga animals po is pwede din po siyang maging GM para po ma-increase yung yields at to decrease naman po mga possible na sakit na magkakaroon sa isang animals. Example dito is aqua advantage salmon. Isa po siya sa genetic na na-develop siya noong 1989. That's why na mabilis siya na-grow as a salmon. So, dito naman tayo sa GMOs in non-food crops and microorganisms. Genetically modified organism, GMOs, in food crops and some microorganisms involve the following. So, number 1, flower production. GMOs in flower production are gene-modified color and extended vase life of flowers. Example, blue roses. It contain cyanidin 3.5 digleucoside with large amounts of flavonols. So dahil dyan, nagproproduce tayo ng ibang kulay like pink, white, yellow, and so on. Number 2, paper production. Modified characteristic of trees for higher yield of paper production. For example, poplar trees, lignin, complete polymer in trees that is removed from wood to make paper through craft process. Nagproproduce tayo ng mga paper or papel, isang mahalagang tulong sa GMO. Number 3, pharmaceutical production. Modified plants to produce pharmaceutical products. Examples, periwinkle plants. Bacterial genes were added to the periwinkle plant to enhance the production of vinblastine, an alkaloid usually added to drugs for cancer treatments like Hodgkin's lymphoma. So, galing na naman ito sa mga bacteria. So, yung bacterial genes or periwinkle plant para ma-enhance yung production, vinblastine na yun ay isang alkaloid na dinadagdag doon sa mga gamot sa cancer, doon sa treatment ng cancer like Hodgkin's lymphoma. So, yun yung halimbawa ng pharmaceutical production. Number 4, bioremediation. Use of modified plants that can assist in the bioremediation of polluted sites. Example, shrub tobacco. Nicotiana glauca or shrub tobacco genetically modified with phytogelatin, TAPCS11 is used for bioremediation. Para maayos din yung ating hangin, yun yung isa para ma-assist yung mga polluted sites natin sa bioremediation. Halimbawa, nito is yung shrub tobacco. So, dito sa shrub tobacco, genetically modified siya with phytogelatin at ginagamit for bioremediation. Number 5. Enzymes and drug production. Use of modified microorganisms that can produce enzymes for food processing and medicines. Example, CG-TIEs or cyclomatodextrine glycose transferase or CG-TIEs. Artemisinin. So dito, ang GMO nakakatulong din siya para mag-produce ng enzymes. Ano nga ba si enzyme? So, enzymes, matatandaan lang natin kay enzymes, siya yung isang catalyst na nagpapabilis ng reaction ito sa katawan ng tao o sa mga halaman or sa mga hayop. Ganun yung kanyang trabaho. Nagpapabilis siya ng proseso ng ating mga cells. So, yun yung trabaho ng mga enzymes. At bukod pa doon, for food processing and medicine, yun yung isa pang function ng GMO bukod sa pagiging enzymes. 6. GMOs in the medical field. Production of drugs, gene therapy, and laboratory researches. Example, genetically engineered insulin used by type 1 diabetes patients. Humalog, modified human insulin that was approved in 1996. So dito nakakagawa tayo ng gamot, nagkakaroon tayo ng gene therapy, and nagkakaroon din tayo ng laboratory researches dahil kay GMO. Example is yung humulin. So si humulin is genetically engineered insulin. Insulin, di ba, ginagamit sa may mga diabetes. Actually, tayong lahat naman ay may insulin na pinoproduce ng pancreas. So, yun ay para mabalance yung ating sugar sa ating dugo. So, to balance glucose of our blood, kailangan natin ng insulin kasi kung hindi maganda yung naging reaction sa katawan natin. Kasi pag may diabetes ka na hindi na maayos ang pag-function ng pancreas, so yun yung ginagamit ng iba na pangturok ay ang insulin para sa may mga diabetes, at siya ay na-approve noong 1996 or modified human insulin.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, classmate. Our topic is genetically modified organisms, science, health, and politics. My part is about benefits of GMOs. Studies show some of the potential benefits of GMOs. Higher efficiency in farming. With the use of pesticide-resistant, herbicide-tolerant GMO crops, there will be less use for herbicide pesticides and lower cost for labor and cultivation. Higher efficiency in farming. Increased harvest, dumadami yung harvest natin. Control fertility, kinokontrol natin dahil na-alter natin yung genes. Increase in food processing, nag-i-increase yung ating food processing, dumadami yung food and processing natin, nasusolusyonan yung hunger natin sa mundo. Improve of desirable characteristics, nag-i-improve yung magandang katangian na kumbaga yung next generation na magaganda yung traits or genes, nutritional and pharmaceutical enhancement. Reduce the use of fertilizer. So dito naman, potential risk of GMOs. Despite the promises, claims of GMOs, the opponents of GMOs claim otherwise. For example, there are studies that show a link in the adoption of pesticide and resistant GMO crops to the significant growth of superweeds that became pesticide and resistant too. This caused additional problem to more than 12 million acres of farm in the United States. Opponents of GMOs have the following major concerns. Number one is there are inadequate studies on the effects of GMOs to the humans and the environment. Dito pa man ay wala pang pag-aaral ng GMO dahil masyado pang bata si GMO. Hindi pa ganon katagal, hindi pa natin So dito naman, potential risk of GMOs. The most notable GMO risks to human are the potential development of allergens and to GM-related crops. and toxicity from the crops. Also, there are studies that show a link in the adoption of pesticides and resistance GMO crops to the significant growth of the superweeds that became pesticide-resistant too. This caused additional problems to more than 12 million acres of farm in the United States. Potential risks of GMO opponents GMOs. There are inadequate studies on the effects of GMO to human and the environment. Dito pa man ay wala pang pag-aaral ng GMO dahil masyado pang bata si GMO. Hindi pa ganun katagal, hindi pa natin nakikita yung long-term effect niya sa atin at sa ating environment. Genetic engineering promotes mutation in organisms which the long-term effect is still unknown. At hindi natin alam baka nagkaroon ng mutation dahil nga sa genetic engineering, ina-alter natin yung gene, maybe may binabago tayo doon sa gene, baka magkaroon ng mutation doon mismo sa cell. Yun yung mahirap solusyonan kasi kapag ganon. Number 3. Human consumption of GMOs might have the following effects. One is more allergic reaction, gene mutation, antibiotic resistance, nutritional value. Bukod pa doon, ang pagkain ng GMO ay nagkakaroon ng allergic reactions. Dahil na doon sa soya, delikado ang allergic reaction sa tao. Pwede din magkaroon ng gene mutation at antibiotic resistance. Since halimbawa kumakain tayo ng pagkain na may GMO, nutritional value, hindi tayo sigurado kung maayos yung kanyang nutritional content. Potential environmental risk caused by GMO. Direct environmental risk. The biodiversity, the use of GM crops can have negative impact on non-target organisms and soil and water ecosystems. Direct environmental risk, ito yung mga disruption of natural communities through competition and interference. Pest strikes or become pests kasi sila na yung nagdo-dominate sa lahat or mawawala yung mga native natin na halaman o mga hayop dahil sa kanila at harmful siya sa ating ecosystem. Meron din siya negative impact sa ating consumer of GMO products. Sa indirect naman, indirect environmental risk, alteration of agricultural practices like managing negative impacts of GMO to the environment such as evaluation of insects, pests, and weeds that become resistant to GMO crops. Sa indirect environmental risk, nagkakaroon ng alteration na ating agricultural practices. Yun yung paghahalaman, yung mga farmer, nagbabago yung kanilang practices, nagkakaroon ng impact sa ating biodiversity. And varied environmental impacts, kung tayo ay gagamit na halimbawa ng fertilizer, hindi na tumatalab ang mga ginagamit na GMO products or yung ating na-insert na genes noon sa halaman or dun sa hayop at ito ay nakaka-apekto sa environment. So, dito naman, potential human health risk caused by GMOs. One specific concern in the possibility for GMO negatively affects human health. This could result from differences in nutritional content, allergic response, or undesired side effects such as toxicity, organ damage, or gene transfer. Sa potential human health risk caused by GMO is, tayong mga tao napaka-sensitive than for us known GMO. Pagkakaroon ng pagbabago, so nagkakaroon ng production toxin ng mga lason sa atin and allergy. Din, nagbabago ang balance ng ating microorganism sa ating bituka. Kasi nandyan lahat halos karamihan ng ating microorganism, good bad bacterials. Other potential risks that raise major concern. Human Genome Project, HGP. Mapping of human genes to provide framework for research and studies in the fields of medicine. Dito yung ating information ng genes natin ay pwede ma-record dyan sa Human Genome Project. Then yung mga may kapangyarihan, yung powerful na tao or mayaman, or may position ang may kakayahan na gawin ito. Next is mutation of genetically engineered microorganism. Genetically modified bacteria and viruses may mutate to become more resistant or virulent that may cause the dreadful disease for human beings. So dito, pwede mag-mutate hanggang sa maging resistant na siya sa mga gamot-gamot at pwede siya mag-cause ng napakadaming sakit sa mga tao. Next, the last is cloning. The asexual reproduction of an organism using parent cell through genetic engineering. In February 24, 1997, the first mammal, Dolly, a sheep from Scotland, was born through cloning. With its celebrate success came from the fear of human cloning. It submerged ethical issue of man playing God. Sa cloning, example ay si Dolly, sheep from Scotland siya, yung clone ng kanyang nanay dahil dito ito yung pinaka-controversial sa lahat dahil para na tayong playing God dahil na-alter natin ang condition na susunod sa ating gusto sa mga ganyang bagay. Nakakalikha tayo ng bagong organism using our intelligence dahil sa intelligence natin nakaka-create tayo ng bagong organism na yung desert traits. Ay yun ang lalabas sa organism na ating lilikhain para playing God na tayo. Si Dolly ang pinaka-successful na clone or cloning. Yun lang po.